Imagine walking into a Grandmaster Nightfall, and instead of playing slow, scared, and defensive, you completely shut the entire room down on demand. Champions floating helplessly in the air, red bars never touching the ground, and elites locked up while your abilities and weapons do all the work for you. That's exactly what this Broodweaver Strand Warlock build does, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this is one of the easiest Grandmaster setups I've ever used. I ran this build this week and last week grinding out GMs, and it turns some of the hardest PvE content in Destiny into something that feels borderline unfair. If you've ever wanted a build where enemies don't get to play the game, this is it. Welcome to Insightful Gaming, and today I'm showing you a Strand Warlock setup that is all about non-stop suspend, ridiculous crowd control, and total battlefield control that makes Grandmasters feel way easier than they ever should. If you've got a Warlock and access to Strand, this is the build I recommend to everyone, and if you don't, this might be the reason you finally make one. If you're enjoying the build so far, make sure to drop a like and subscribe for more Destiny 2 builds like this, and if you want to play together, talk builds, or join an amazing community of Destiny players, make sure to join the Discord linked below. For the exotic armor, this entire build is powered by methodical, and this is what turns Broodweaver from strong into completely oppressive in Grandmaster content. Methodical's perk, Stylistixis, makes your arcane needle do way more than just damage, because every enemy damaged by your melee becomes part of a chain reaction that suspends and controls the entire room. When you damage targets with Arcane Needle, defeating them triggers a suspending detonation, and if you land multiple needles on a tougher target, it immediately causes a much larger and more powerful suspend blast instead. On top of that, defeating suspended enemies feeds melee energy right back to you, which means Arcane Needle is constantly coming back online. This is the core loop of the build, because your melee is no longer just a damage tool, it's your primary crowd control button. Champions, elites, entire groups of enemies, they all get lifted instantly and left completely helpless. This exotic also lets you deal with barrier champions by breaking their shields through your melee interactions, which means you're never stuck waiting on teammates or weapon swaps to deal with them. For the weapons, the star of this build is Thorn, and it fits perfectly into non-stop suspend gameplay. Thorn's damage over time shreds enemies while they're suspended, and kills leave behind remnants that massively boost your damage, which feels incredible in Grandmasters where you're playing at range and staying safe. The poison keeps ticking while enemies are locked in the air, and when targets die while suspended, the control just keeps spreading, turning Thorn into a room-clearing machine instead of just a hand cannon. Your special weapon slot is very flexible here, and I'm using a micro-missile frame grenade launcher, PSI Eterna 4, simply because suspended enemies are easy targets, and it gives you reliable burst damage for mages and tougher enemies. For your heavy, I'm running the Good Stout Combat Bow with Demoralize and Repulsor Brace, which works extremely well since suspended enemies make precision kills easy, weakening spreads to nearby targets, and Repulsor Brace adds extra survivability. The goal with these weapons isn't chasing raw DPS, it's taking advantage of enemies being permanently suspended, letting damage over time, debuffs, and safe precision damage do all the work for you. For the subclass setup, we're obviously running Broodweaver, and every choice here is built around maximizing suspend uptime and feeding back into that loop. For your super, use Needlestorm for strong burst damage and fast room pressure when you need it. Your class ability is Healing Rift because survivability matters most in Grandmasters, and this build already brings insane control. Your melee is Arcane Needle, and this is one of the key pieces because it helps you start fights with Unravel and, through your exotic, sets up constant suspend value. Your grenade is Shackle Grenade, and this is non-negotiable for the way this build functions because it's what you're consuming to activate Weaver's Trance, and it's also your most reliable suspend tool on demand. For aspects, run Weaver's Call to deploy Threadlings whenever you drop your Rift, giving you free extra damage and cleanup while enemies are locked in place, and run Mindspun Invocation because consuming your Shackle Grenade puts you into Weaver's Trance so your weapon final blows suspend nearby targets, which is what turns your gunfights into non-stop crowd control. For fragments, start with Thread of Mind. So defeating suspended targets feeds you class ability energy, which means more rifts and more Weaver's Call value. Then run Thread of Generation, because dealing damage constantly fuels grenade energy, so you can keep your shackle grenade available as often as possible. Then run Thread of Continuity to extend the duration of your Suspend and other Strand debuffs so enemies stay locked down longer, and finally run Thread of Warding for Woven Mail so you stay tanky and safe while you're controlling the whole room. For stats, you want to prioritize weapon effectiveness first, then ability uptime. Push your weapon stat up as high as possible, ideally to 200, since this build relies heavily on gunplay to trigger suspends while Weaver's Trance is active. After that, get your grenade stat to 100 so your shackle grenade is always available when you need to re-enter Weaver's Trance. Then get your class ability to 100 to keep healing Rift and Weaver's Call cycling consistently. Everything else is secondary and can be filled in naturally, because the core of this build is suspend control, not stat min-maxing. For armor mods, the goal is simple. Keep your abilities cycling, generate orbs consistently, and stay alive while everything is suspended. On your helmet, run Heavy Ammo Finder, Hands-On, and Kinetic Siphon so you're generating orbs through Thorn kills, feeding super energy through melee usage, and keeping heavy ammo flowing in longer activities. On your gauntlets, use Grenade Kickstart to help get your shackle grenade back faster, Impact Induction to convert melee damage into grenade energy, and Bolstering Detonation so grenade damage feeds class ability energy and keeps your Rift coming back quickly. For your chest piece, this is activity dependent, but always slot Concussive Dampener for general damage reduction, and then adjust the rest based on the enemies you're facing. On your boots, run Insulation, Recuperation, and Innovation. So picking up orbs heals you, restores grenade energy, and feeds class ability energy all at the same time. For your bond, use Bomber, Distribution, and Reaper. So casting your Rift refunds grenade energy. Your abilities feed each other, and your next weapon kill. After using, your class ability generates an orb to keep the entire loop running smoothly. For seasonal artifact mods, the important thing to understand is that this build doesn't rely on them to function at all, which is part of why it's so strong and future-proof. You can comfortably clear Grandmasters with this setup even if the artifact changes, so you're never locked into a specific seasonal meta. Because of that, I recommend keeping your artifact choices simple and flexible, focusing mainly on whatever anti-champion mods are required for the activity you're running, so you're always covered against barrier and unstoppable enemies. Beyond that, you can lean into general elemental perks that fit your loadout, like picking up Void perks toward the bottom for survivability, or Arc perks toward the top if they help your weapons feel smoother, but none of these are mandatory. To wrap it all up, this Broodweaver Strand Warlock build is all about absolute control. You're suspending non-stop, shutting down champions with ease, and making Grandmasters feel way easier than they ever should. If you're looking for a build that's safe, consistent, and ridiculously powerful in endgame PvE, this is it. If you want to run content together, talk builds, or just hang out with an awesome group of Destiny players, make sure to join the Discord and come play with us. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one here on Insightful Gaming.